Liftoff of mission 41D. Flight of the orbiter Discovery, and the shuttle has cleared the tower.
Hey, what's going on? We are live. Welcome to the Health or High Water podcast. Brett here as always. Got an awesome guest. Drew, what's going on? How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I've listened to a couple of your guys' episodes and enjoy your guys' podcast.
Well, I'm super excited. Number one, because you're a podcaster yourself. So you get first of all, you can speak into the mic directly.
I have been podcasting now. I just dropped my first episode of the second season, but I definitely have a lot to learn.
Okay. All right. How's that going?
It's going great. It's I did 25 episodes, took a break, and then recently started again about 2 weeks ago. So kind of a little bit into season 2 and meeting a ton of people and learning a lot.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what kind of guests do you have? Well, why don't you introduce yourself first for the listeners tuning in? Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Drew Shore, born and raised in Denver, Colorado. Oldest of 4 boys. Moved away from home when I was 13 to play hockey. Ended up coming back to play hockey at DU for 3 years. Then had a 12-year professional career, played in the NHL for 3 or 4 different teams, and then also played overseas. Retired in 2021, and now I'm living full-time in Denver.
You retired with the Panthers or
Carolina?
Sorry.
Yep, no worries. Carolina was my last year. That was the COVID year, which is a little shitty for obvious reasons. But enjoying what I'm doing now and happy to be here with you guys.
Yeah, that must have been the COVID as your final year. That must have been kind of a weird experience.
Yeah, for people who don't remember, that was like the year that the NHL played half the season with no fans. Couldn't really go out to dinner. I was away from my family a lot, away from my young daughters. It was a pretty shitty last year.
Yeah. But I mean, you got to play for so many years. What was getting into the NHL and like that whole journey? Was it as grueling a process as some would imagine? Sorry about that.
No worries. Yeah, I mean, it was grueling, but it was also a game that I loved. I mean, I grew up loving hockey from the time I was 3 years old on, and my mission was to become an NHL player, and so being able to kind of live that out on a day-to-day basis was awesome, but it was definitely something that was stressful and required a lot of work, and something that I probably, looking back, didn't appreciate enough while I was going through it.
How'd you train, like when you were younger, you grow up, you learned to skate before you could walk?
I wouldn't go that far, but I learned to skate at a young age, and I was just a kid who loved hockey. Like, you know what I mean? I was one of those guys who, like, if I could have skated for 5 hours, I would skate for 5 hours. And I wasn't like one of those kids who had the pleasure of growing up in Canada where I had a rink around, but I moved to Canada at a pretty young age, and then it gave me access to a lot more ice and allowed me to kind of work on my game.
Yeah, what's your favorite hockey movie?
Ooh. I would probably say like Happy Gilmore or Mystery Alaska was probably movies I used to watch a ton back in the day.
Is that goal size regulation?
It's great. I actually heard a rumor too that they're coming out with a new Happy Gilmore
I heard that
in the
too.
next year or two, so that should be exciting to watch.
I heard that too. I was hoping it wasn't just hype. That actually gonna.
Yeah, we'll see.
Oh my God, that's too funny. So you started we talked about the podcast. You've had professional experience on a high level. Now the podcast that you're doing, and you and I were talking about this before we started this podcast. We were talking about transitioning athletes from high level, professional careers, or maybe it was even college careers. Why did you do that? Why is that important to you? And like, what role does that play in your motivation?
I think it's important to me because I struggled a lot my first couple of years of retirement, and it was something that I thought I struggled with because I didn't quite live up to the expectations that I had for myself during my career. And then I realized that kind of struggle was very common among all athletes. It wasn't a struggle that was just relevant to my career. It was the guy who played 25 years in the NHL, made $100 million, won 2 Stanley Cups. He was miserable among retirement. It was the guy who played Division III football who decided to stop playing football. He was miserable during retirement. So I think that kind of focusing on these guys who have been able to successfully transition from sport into business has been such a fun podcast. I interview so many athletes who are now doing a ton of cool things. And I actually started a company around this recently as well, which is off and running. So it's been fun.
What is the secret? What is it when you're going through that? If you can just go back to that time, you're super competitive and now you're something forces you into retirement, or you get to a point where you're going to retire. What is what's the right way to do it? Refocus your energy on something new, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's one of the most important things that I've learned through my own journey and just my podcast is just guys who are able to transition more quickly, find their next passion in life quicker. So I think that like I was under the impression for myself, like I was gone away from my kids a lot. I thought I was going to be the perfect dad for 6-12 months. I thought I was going to be happy every day, drop my kids off at school, pick them up. And you kind of, after being so competitive as an athlete for so many years, when you don't have a purpose, it's tough to really feel fulfilled. And so I think like being able to find that purpose, whatever it is, and that's what's cool about my podcast. I interview guys who are into real estate, wealth management, fitness, working in hockey, like whatever. But just guys who are coaching, it could be anything, but just guys who find a passion next, I think is super important.
Yeah. What was when you were in the NHL? What did you said you didn't live up to your expectations? What were your expectations? What did you want to get out of it when you were in it? Would you want to be like a Hall of Famer? Did you want to have like what was the dream back then?
I mean, the dream like growing up was like you always envisioned yourself like playing in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup, like winning multiple Stanley Cups, raising the cup above your head and kind of running around the ice with future kids, even though I didn't have kids at the time. So I think that was kind of the dream. And I mean, I was a second overall pick, had a little bit of success during different stints with teams, but was never really able to kind of have the career that I wanted to have. And it wasn't until I kind of changed my mindset on like kind of focusing on what went wrong while I was playing to then focusing on, well, if I wouldn't have had those failures, I wouldn't have had the success in business I'm having now. Was kind of a huge monumental shift for me.
Yeah. What was the thing you loved most about hockey? What was it about hockey? Just the pure competition of it?
I think it was like the high that I got from like when you score a goal, it's like you get such a euphoric feeling for a short duration of time. That was something that I really enjoyed. You would have thought I would have scored more based on how much I loved it. But that and just like the guys, like hockey guys, so many of my best friends all played hockey. It's just such a grind during the season. Like there's so many laughs, there's so much camaraderie in the locker room, and so I'd probably say like the feeling of scoring and also just the group of guys you get to hang out with every day is pretty special.
That's cool. As I mentioned before in this podcast, I wrestled. Well, I was a baseball player, but I wrestled. But yeah, I resonate with that camaraderie aspect of it, having your buddies and you're all like in misery in a sense, like with practices. I'm assuming they were brutal.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like there's so many highs and lows and ups and downs during the season, and like different level of kind of comedy from different guys, and just like there's just things that too. There's just that like that you go through that like you're so happy that you went through with guys, and it brings you like through so much closer. And like there's some of like my best friends in the world are guys I played with.
You still stay in touch? Keep up with them? You see them often?
Yeah, I mean, see them often. I wouldn't say as much now that guys are retired, live in different places with families and stuff, but definitely keep in contact with them. And I think that a lot of hockey guys stick pretty close post-retirement, which is something else that makes the game special.
Yeah, close. You mean like stick close with their friends?
Yeah,
like stay in touch.
Just stay in touch. And I mean, like you went to battle with these guys for so many years, depending on what teams and stuff you played on, and certainly guys are closer with others. But we actually have a pretty good community of ex-hockey players in Denver, which makes it fun as well.
Interesting. Who have you played against that you were the most impressed with? The best player where you saw you're like, this dude's just incredible. Anybody stick out in your mind?
Yeah, I was actually on the ice playing for Vancouver. I think it was Connor McDavid's rookie year when he scored his 100th point at home, and I remember like the building was just going nuts, and it was like something that you're mad you got scored on, but then you're almost like a part of like you just kind of see greatness and can do nothing but like kind of nod your head. So I mean, I think that guys are getting so good now. Like the elite players in the game are so much better than they've ever been, and the game's in a good place. And the season actually, there's a couple games in Europe to start the year, but like the first official games on United States or Canadian soil are today, so I'm excited for the season to get going, and we'll see how it goes.
That's so cool. That's so cool. What's the leap in like the quantum leap you're talking? Is it these kids are just practicing skills at a younger age? Are they faster?
Yeah,
training.
A lot of people ask me this, and I'd be interested to hear your opinion with other sports I don't know as well. But I think a lot of it comes down to like the accessibility to like technology that these kids have now. Like if I was young and I wanted to watch a game, like I could maybe watch like a game on TV that was on at a certain time at night, and it's like hard to see the puck. And now it's like these kids can just like pull up their phones and they see every goal that was scored last night. They see every move that was made last night. So it's like you can be a 7-year-old kid, sit there on an iPhone and like see how all these players are performing. And I think that I don't know if that's the main reason, but that's something that I've thought a lot about and attribute a lot of it to.
Yeah. That's interesting because YouTube came out when I first started learning guitar. I first picked up an instrument. Music for me was like, I love this feeling. I couldn't find it anywhere else. And YouTube came out the year I picked up the guitar, and I saw tutorial on how to play this song, and it changed the game for me. There was somebody showing me how to play a song. It was such a revolutionary leap at that point. So you're right, like the accessibility to like, oh, I can learn this. I can learn this move. So yeah, probably that, and then maybe just the evolution of the game.
Yeah, I mean the game is trending. Like guys are getting more skilled, and I mean there's more skills coaches, and every kid, I'm sure you see it in training, like his 12, 13 years old has a skills coach and has a video coach.
Totally.
And I actually think that like some of it's gone too far one way, but in just terms of like, I mean, now you see it with the scoring among the league. Like, there's a couple guys in every team who have significantly so much more points, and like the middle class of the NHL is kind of getting pushed out.
Interesting. What's the real quick? I know I love talking about hockey and number one, so I hope I'm not just hammering you with all these hockey questions.
They're great.
We got some other stuff, but so I grew up a Chicago guy. My whole family Chicago sports, Blackhawks. Now hockey I didn't follow quite as much, but I know they got Bedard now. What's the deal? Is this guy kid is insanely talented as they make him out to be?
Yeah, he is, but I think that they need to be careful there. Like you saw with Edmonton for years and years when they had the first overall pick, it's just a matter of like, as good as he is, he still needs to be surrounded by the right pieces and good players. And I think that they've started to do that. They had a good offseason, but a lot of his success is going to come down to the pieces that they put around him.
Yeah, that's so true, man. I think about that for football too, about like I said, Chicago, so I watch Chicago Bears, and we draft quarterbacks over and over again. It's like, why aren't any of these quarterbacks? But you're right, it's like the people you put around, the team, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can have the best quarterback in the world, but if he's got no time to make a play because his offensive line stinks and he doesn't have a receiver who can get a window of separation, right? It doesn't matter how good the quarterback is.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that these teams with these high picks need to be careful of. And I mean, it looks like Chicago. I can't speak on the NFL necessarily, but it looks like they've done a decent job of that this year.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. I'm excited to watch the Bears play this year. I think we got a good shot. What's the transition now that we talked about the athletic stuff with transitioning out of athletics into business and having a good transition for athletes. How do we do that? Is it setting up groups? Is it allowing athletes to have like conversations with other athletes that are going through this? In your mind, what can we do to step in and give advanced athletes opportunities to transition in a healthy way? How do we do that?
I think they can all join the company Amalfi.
Tell me about it.
No, yeah. So, I mean, our kind of thought process behind the company is what I've noticed a lot in a lot of the old traditional networking and stuff like that. Those things are people are so sick of Zoom calls. So, like what we did last week is we brought a ton of CEOs and athletes to Aspen, Colorado together and put them through 2 days of like intense workouts, hiking, saunas, cold plunges, and stuff like that. And so I think that what we've learned is the connection that guys make, and it doesn't have to be workout's an unbelievable one, but it can also be a golf tournament. It can also be a pickleball tournament. So I think putting guys in a competitive setting again is a way that connects on a much deeper level than like go meeting for a coffee or a drink.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more, if you don't mind, expand a little bit more about this company. So it's new. When was this?
Yeah, so we started about 6 months ago. I started it with my brother and two of our really good friends. We've expanded a lot since then. And I kind of noticed that when I started, if you want to call it networking or whatever, when I was done playing hockey, is you ask a guy to meet a really successful guy for a coffee or a beer, and they have to work all day, and their family wants them to be home after, and maybe they reluctantly go, but you don't quite get the bond that you get if you go play golf with someone for 5 hours. I mean, you go on the golf course with someone for 5 hours. You're walking side by side with them. You see how they are during highs, during lows. You kind of develop a character bond. Someone wins, someone loses. Whoever loses wants to play again. So I kind of think putting guys back in a natural competitive environment is such a better way for this to happen than the old traditional way.
Yeah. And so are you going to host events regularly? How does it work? Where are you guys at now? Is it hosting an event every 6 months or where?
Yeah, so we're going to have a couple pillars of events. The wellness one we just threw was a huge success. We're going to try and build off that. So ideally, we're going to do like 4 wellness ones a year, 4 golf events a year, 4 tennis/pickleball, and then 4 like kind of hiking adventure ones. So I think that like I said, the coolest thing from the one last week is it was 30 guys who share a love for fitness and like longevity and wellness. We had speakers on that, but it was like from all diverse business backgrounds. Like we had CEOs of huge companies versus with professional poker players, with ex-hockey players, and getting these guys, like one of the days we had like this sauna cold plunge session. So you were in groups of 4. So 3 guys were in the sauna, 1 guy would go jump in the cold plunge, and you're just kind of in there together, sweating, talking about everything. And it's like guys were able to leave the event with 10 or 15 new friends, 10 or 15 different guys they were going to contact about different business opportunities. And then, so I think that kind of changing the way that that's happened in the past, I think is something I'm really passionate about. And then just kind of personally knowing how hard the transition was for me, if I can develop something that can help the next guy have an easier time, that's what I'm all about.
When you're running those events, are you managing them, or do you want to be in them?
So that's an interesting question. And like, I will give a shout out to a guy named Andy Lynn, who's an absolute fitness maniac. He actually just ran that Leadville 100 where like it's a 100-mile race in like under 25 hours. So it was funny because working with him to design the event, I was like, okay, these events can't be so hard that I can't personally do them, right? But no, he did a great job and took it easy, and you could kind of get what you wanted to out of the fitness aspect of it.
So you got to participate in yourself.
Yeah, so I got to participate in the events.
What's up.
My legs and hip flexors have never been more sore from running with him because I'm not a huge runner. But like I personally left like this event with like probably learned at least one thing from every single guy there, and also like have probably 15 or 20 new friends from the events who I left feeling very motivated too. And I know a lot of the feedback I've gotten is like guys left that event like tired from the event because we packed a lot into the 48 hours, but like they wanted to get after whatever they were getting up to in the next couple months.
You got room for one more?
Yeah, we'd love to have you there. We'd love to have you there. And it was cool. We hiked Maroon Bells and from Colorado. I've never actually hiked that.
Oh my gosh.
Some of these guys, so you know, like the day was they ran 10 miles in the morning, then hiked Maroon Bells, fitness workout, and then we had the saunas and stuff. So, I mean, so it was like I was way behind in that department. But like listening to the way like some of them live their lives was very motivating, especially there were a ton of guys who got up and spoke about different topics. We had everyone from Sahil Bloom to Kyle Quincy to Brian. So just these guys who do so much, and like, so kind of listen to them. They were all like open forums, so you could raise your hand at any time and ask a question, and it was a cool format.
That is so cool. Where did you guys host it? Where was everybody staying at?
It was actually at the St. Regis Hotel in Aspen, which is one of the coolest hotels I've ever been to.
St. Regis.
That location doesn't suck either.
Wow. I'm just picturing how beautiful this weekend. What was it, a couple days?
2 days. We got lucky. One of my co-founders, Peter Jennings, was adamant about hosting it during this time because we called him like the leaf man because he was talking about for a year how beautiful the leaves would look. And actually, by the time we got there, everyone was like, all right, Peter, you're actually right. So after making fun of him for a year and a half, we kind of just tipped our hat to him and realized he knew what he was talking about.
Oh, man, I agree with him. It's the most beautiful place of all. You're from Colorado?
I'm from Colorado, but never, because I was so busy playing hockey all the time, I didn't spend a lot of time in the mountains growing up.
I see that too. I moved here from Milwaukee. We were talking about that. I moved from Milwaukee. One thing I noticed that was interesting was a lot of the Coloradans, natives, haven't been too much into the mountains.
No, I've never been to Telluride either, which I don't. Wow. Yeah, people like say Telluride's one of the most special places on earth. Haven't been there, so I guess I got some traveling to do.
Yeah, well, this is some great spots for your events now. You can do some destinations. I imagine there's going to be people that attend an event like this, and then they're like, when's the next one?
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of that feedback. Like I said, I mean, we also have a girl, a woman, one of my good friends, my wife's good friends, who helps us with a ton of the event planning stuff. And to be honest, I know nothing about planning an event, and a lot of the other co-founders don't either. So a lot of the success goes to her just because she had everything so dialed, from dinner menus to seating charts to all this cool stuff. There was a couple questions on every table for one of the opening like icebreakers for dinner that really kind of opened guys up and made it a much more, I would say, like uncomfortable situation at first, but guys that really opened up quickly and kind of bonded.
That's awesome. She kind of hosting events is super tough. How do you find the people? Is it just, put it on the ad out and,
So we wanted this event. We've thought a lot about this. For this event, we personally invited 30 different people from different founders, like networks of our founders, because we wanted it to kind of be, it wasn't exactly like this, but we wanted to see what happened when like 5 CEOs, 5 fitness influencers, 5 ex-athletes, 5 crypto poker guys all got together for these 2 days and kind of saw what came from it. I think that was kind of, I've been to events before, but a lot of the events that I've been to were either like all athletes or like all business guys. So it was, I think that what made this event special was really the diverse group of people.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've never heard that before. It was a very interesting selection of that. I'm assuming there is a reason. Yeah, the poker thing. What made you want to do the poker thing or the crypto or?
Well, one of the guys who founded the company with me is a huge sports fanatic and just started his career in poker, daily fantasy sports,
Nice.
Crypto.
Nice.
And he's actually, he's gonna laugh hearing this because I like to give him a hard time often. But he's one of like the smartest, most savvy business guys I know, who's always has a million connects, and he's just so well connected because a lot of people like hanging out with him because he's just such a normal, nice guy, but has so many interesting stories that really open people up.
That's so cool. One of the things, as a personal trainer, I've been a trainer for 15 years. One of the things the best thing in my career is the people that I get to personal train and what they do for a living, what excites them. I've trained a professional poker player before, and all we would do is lift weights and talk poker.
Well, it's funny because I think a lot of these guys, I love like learning about like the poker world too because it's so foreign to me. So I just asked them like poker questions all the time, and they would be asking me hockey questions, and we'd ask. So I think that's what made the event cool. Was just like, you know what I mean, there's so many people who are like obsessed with other people's businesses and lives. So I think that was a pretty cool dynamic.
That's freaking awesome. I'm gonna tell you just from me to you and the listeners here because. What a great idea you're onto, and you're already making it happen. We've had this conversation many times with athletes now. Over the 100 episodes that we've had, this topic has come up so many times. This is an amazing idea. You're gonna be so successful with this. It's so needed.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's needed, and I think in general too, like people want connection. People want like to be among other like very motivated people. Like that was something for me is as a dad of. Do you have kids?
No, I don't. I wish.
Okay, well, it's like for me, like the toughest thing in my life currently is like my ability to balance like being an entrepreneur and being a dad. And there were a lot of guys there who've been very successful at doing both. So that was like one of the things for me that I personally got out of the event was like kind of learning from these guys because I definitely want to take pride in doing both and do both at a high level. So it's like figuring out that's a tough challenge on a day-to-day basis, and I don't think anyone has it figured out, but definitely learned some stuff there.
Do you hold yourself to this as a father? Do you hold yourself to the same standard as you did athletically?
My wife and I talk about this a lot. I think that I held myself to a very high standard, not necessarily athletically, but just like I think I hold myself to a very high standard, and that's something that I really want to pass on to my daughters. And my wife does a great job of that as well. And I think that it's being a father's tough. It's the most rewarding job in the world, but it's also, especially with the world we're living in now, it's like the toughest time ever, I think, to be a parent. I think trying to find a way to navigate things as best you can. And like I said, no one has all the answers, but you try and do your best and take things that you should have done better. And I'm very lucky, I will say, to have 2 amazing parents, and I do model a lot of my parenting off of them. And like I had an amazing dad and mom who are both around today and still help me with a lot of things. So I feel very fortunate that I feel like I have a head start there.
What was your favorite thing about your dad?
I think my favorite thing about my dad, especially as like this, my parents were my dad played soccer. My mom was a professional tennis player, so they knew nothing about hockey at all. So my parents were very athletic, and they never they never pushed me to do anything, but they could not have ever they were as supportive as I could have ever wanted. So like they were able to support me in a way, but you see these parents now, especially if they played hockey a little bit or whatever, who like think like they know everything about the game and their kid should do this and that. So my parents like didn't know that much. I mean, they know a lot now because I had 3 younger brothers who all played professional hockey too. So my dad's probably watched a combined 10,000 hockey games and can't even skate. But I was just feel like very blessed that my parents like always supported me and were able to provide me with like, you know, I mean, if I wanted to go to this practice, they were taking me to the practice. And their one requirement the whole time is I worked hard, and they were like, we don't care if you play, but like if we're gonna drive you, you got to work hard.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was like the only rule and the only thing they cared about. And they were like, we don't care what you do, but whatever you do, you got to work hard at. And that was kind of their message to me. And that was something I definitely want to pass on. My daughters want nothing to do with hockey or a rink. I want them to be tennis players. My dream would be if they were tennis players or golfers, but I'm currently a dance dad, so that's where that's where I'm stuck.
When's the next recital, honey?
I was at a football game last year, not because my daughter was playing in the football game, because my 6-year-old at the time was cheerleading for the football game. So that is how I spend my weekends now.
That is too funny. I teach baseball and softball, but I have a softball girl. I think she's 11, and she's like, you want to hear? I'm doing an audition. We'll be, working in reps or whatever for hitting. She's like, I'm auditioning for a play. Do you want to hear me sing the part? I'm like, yeah, as long as you're hitting the ball. And she'll sing it, and I'm like, oh, that's great. As long as you're passionate.
Yeah, it's funny. So it's like I kind of try and pass that on. It's like whatever they're passionate about, I kind of make sure like they're going to do that hard and well. And other than that, I don't really care what they're into.
That's awesome. That's a really good thing. I see that a lot with parenting now. With some of the kids I see at baseball and stuff, is they're trying to like navigate, how do I be supportive and push my child without being overbearing?
Yeah, and I see like a lot of my friends who have boys who are either playing hockey now or into sports. That's a whole different dynamic too, right? Like I grew up in an all-boy household, 4 boys. So it was a huge shift for me when I had girls, and I don't know, like I think it would be a lot harder for me for that perspective, like if I had a boy who was playing hockey, on kind of how I managed to walk that line, because it is a very tough thing to do, I'm sure, in different situations. So it's been interesting to see how some of my friends have handled that. But I mean, like we said, all you can do is kind of put your best foot forward and go from there.
Girls are different, so much different to coach than boys. Boys you can break down. Boys you can be straight with them. And I think girls, there's a whole different element of patience and conversating and, hey, how do you feel about this? And it takes a lot more finesse, right?
Yeah, and I mean they're like carbon copies of my wife, which creates a fun dynamic. So when dad's in trouble with one of them, I'm hearing it from all 3 of them. So it's 3-on-1, and I actually know a little bit. I have a little bit of sympathy for how my mom had it the last 20 years now.
That is too funny. Is there any nutrition? Do you get into any nutrition stuff with? I mean, being healthy, you're doing the mindset stuff, which is huge, in the getting together. Is there any part of nutrition you got into yet with these groups, or?
Yeah, so we had a guy named Dan Churchill who is from Sydney, Australia, who moved to New York because he got a cooking show and is also like an ultra runner. And he did a panel on nutrition last week for an hour, which was super interesting because, I mean, as you know, there's so much data out there now that, like, is this diet better for you? Is this diet? Like, for a while, it was like people were vegetarian, and now people are carnivore, and there's all this stuff. But, I mean, I think that the one kind of takeaway that I've opened my eyes to the last couple of years is just kind of how bad like our food system is here. And it was something that like people have no idea about and can have such an effect on how you live your day-to-day life, just from an energy standpoint, mood standpoint, disease standpoint. So I think that I'm trying to get more educated myself. I'm sure you're very educated in that as we kind of go. But I guess I was just kind of oblivious a little bit growing up, and even until the last 5 or 10 years, kind of on how like bad some of the stuff in our food system is.
Yeah. America's got some work to do.
Yeah, I would say a little bit. Yeah.
Have you traveled to? You've been to Europe?
Yeah. So I lived in. My oldest daughter was born in Switzerland. I lived in Zurich for 3 years and in Russia during the end of my career as well. So I have like experienced some of the European culture.
Different. Very different food.
Very different food. And like, I mean, everyone talks about it. Like, but I mean, that's something that like back in the day, I thought like pasta was pasta, right? Like, you know what I mean? And so it's like, then you kind of get exposed to these different things. Well, so I love learning about that stuff. Like I'm huge into like I'm like a longevity.
That's what's up.
Biohack. Like I've called myself a wannabe still, but I'm like, I'm getting more educated on it. And I mean, it's just one of those things now. Like I want to be able to, I'm very lucky, something I didn't appreciate, to leave the game of hockey healthy. Like I'm able to play sports and play golf and work out and all that stuff. And that's something I want to be able to sustain at a high level for the next 20 or 30 years. And I think the only way I'm going to be able to do that is if I kind of do the right things day in and day out today. Yeah,
you nailed it, man. Yeah. Question for you then. What do you do? What's the biggest thing for your brain that you love to do? It could be little, small, big, whatever. Maybe a daily habit you do that you're like, this makes me smarter, more intellectual.
I mean, A lot of it is reading for me. Like I try and like read, like especially now, like on the fitness, like the Peter Attia stuff. Like I try and just kind of educate myself, like on a day-to-day basis. And like I said, I will say I'm definitely not the smartest person in the room, but I do have a lot of ADD. So I love to like get into a lot of stuff during the day, and being able to dive into different kind of podcasts or reading materials or whatever, and just try and learn as much about kind of everything from how your body works to nutrition to business to sports to everything is something I try and just keep the brain firing.
Yeah, it's kind of addicting, right? Like when you get that. Do you ever get that aha moment when you're like, holy, this makes sense?
Yeah, it is. And I mean, it was even something we talked about. I feel like I've been talking about this so much recently, but one decision I've made recently in my life is to kind of drastically pull back my alcohol consumption. And it wasn't like anything like I had a problem, but I mean, I was kind of like your average recreational
beer
like recreational drinker. And it's like one of those things that like you kind of like spend a couple weekends not having any drinks with good workouts and like ton of stuff done. It almost like becomes like almost addicting, just kind of seeing how much you're able to kind of accomplish and how good you can feel. That it's like, I think it's very similar.
Totally. And the money you don't spend on liquor, you go out in Denver, you're paying $12 a drink. You have a couple of those, you have a couple of shots, your bill's like $200 before you know.
Well, yeah, and then it's even like the opportunity cost of like, then you're hungover, then you feel worse the next day, and then it just kind of snowballs. So I mean, I think that was something that was super eye-opening from last week for me as well, is just hearing kind of like, I feel like society's kind of moving that way in general, but I feel like a lot of super highly successful people are definitely making that change in their lifestyle. Yeah,
no, you're 100% right. What's the next step then with this this company you've started? It's newish. You've seen a lot of success early on. What's the next step? How do you just need more people? Are you just more advertising, more awareness, more professionals?
I think it's just doing these first like 5 or 10 events during the end of this year, and then for 2025, doing these events at a super high level. So every person leaves this event kind of like we talked about with, they learned a ton of knowledge, they had a ton of fun, and they have a ton of new connections. Yeah. So if we can do that for all these events, then we can basically grow our user base high enough. And then from there, once we have this network or user base, then it's like the opportunities are endless from us from a business standpoint, whether it's like starting our own VC fund or basically like connecting members for different business opportunities. So right now, all we're focused on is just throwing these first, call them 10 to 12 events and doing them at a super high level. And I think from there, like I said, the first one, it was great, but we definitely learned a couple things too. There's a couple things that I didn't think of that we can take going forward and just trying to build it out. And then, like I said, I mean, I have a ton of joy now. And like, I mean, I retired in 21. It probably took me 3-ish years to kind of, I mean, I still struggle with it a little bit on some days, but I mean, I kind of feel like I got over the hump 2 or 3 years into retirement. So, I mean, if my buddy plays and retires next year and he can kind of step into something right away and off and thriving, that brings me a lot of personal joy.
Yeah. What a good point. That's a great point too. Like if somebody, you had this transition period for you said 2-3 years before you were able to, like, imagine somebody who just retires and knows they have something to go to right away.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, certain guys are able to kind of like take that decompression time, and some guys are able to use it very well. Like I have a good buddy, who's doing great with it, who's got 4 kids at home, who's gone a lot, who's spending time and is happy. But majority of guys are very unhappy during that transition time, and it can lead to a lot of bad stuff. So I think that kind of just shortening that up for guys, I think would be a huge benefit.
Oh, man, that's freaking fantastic. Yeah, I remember watching Tom Brady. He just retired, and watching him announce the game, and I could see it in his eyes. I'm like, there's a man who wants to be on the field so bad. You could just see as he was announcing, I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's tough. Like I walked right into kind of my agency job at Wasserman, which I'm no longer with Wasserman, but I would remember being at a game my first year in LA. It was LA was playing the Ducks, and I remember like being there and like I should have been having a great time, but I was so bitter towards the game of hockey for a while that it almost like made it not enjoyable to be around the game. And then I think that, like I said, I finally kind of moved past that, but it definitely took me a while.
Yeah, that's so interesting. It's like me attending musical events. I play music live, and it's like if I go to see a live show, I'm like, I'm not happy. Yeah. I'm like, I want to go home immediately and practice and book more shows.
That's awesome. So what's going on with your music career?
So yeah, I started in Milwaukee. I had a band there, played for 10 years, and then since I moved out here, I played a bunch of shows. I do.
What type of music?
So I play. I do a lot of like corporate events. I do a lot of grand opening parties for for companies. I got a couple coming up with Huntington Bank. I did two grand openings before with them. I've played street parties, weddings.
The most famous like musician that I would know who the music would be similar to would be who?
Oh, Andy Grammer. Let's see. That's a tough one, man. So you remember like Jack Johnson, early Jack Johnson? I love early Jack Johnson, but then I like it a little bit more upbeat. I loved R&B. I like Irish music. And then I love hip hop. So I kind of combine all those things I love, and that's kind of what I ended up sounding like.
That's awesome.
But I'm a,
When's your next show?
The next one, public show. So I have a show on Thursday. What day is it today? Tuesday? Thursday, we're playing at Akoya downtown. Trip, come in, buddy. Hey, come in. Come in. Join us on our podcast. Trip walked in. You guys in for a treat here. Trip's walking through the door. I don't think your mic's on. How was class, man?
Hi, guys.
Is your mic on? Double
About
check.
to find out here second.
What class you coming from?
I was teaching senior boxing.
There you go.
There's only 2 or 3 fights that broke out, so it was a good class.
There you go. I thought you ended at 12:30.
What age are these people boxing?
We have one person in our class that's 103.
Wow, so going back to what I was talking about, if I'm still boxing at 103, I did something right.
Trip's got pictures of like him with mitts and you know the 90-year-olds, 100 and they're still boxing. But going back to what we were talking about is like people want this stuff. They don't want to get old. You know, they don't want to be treated like they're 90. They don't want to be treated like they're 80. They want to have activities like this that like they had a yoga thing set up the other day and they're like, no, we want to do strength training. These are like 80-year-olds that want to strength train.
Yeah, I mean, that's like what we were talking about. I think that's like where I kind of see society going in general is like people kind of realize, I mean, depending on what you think, you kind of you got a very short amount of time on earth here. And it's like, I mean, if I'm going to live for hopefully another 70, 80 years, I want to live as many of those at a high level as I can.
Yeah. You want to find competition. That was your whole thing is like, you know, as an athlete, you have so much competition. And then what happens when you retire? You lose all, you're like, we're thirsting for competition.
Yeah, we talked about it earlier. I mean, I want to be 90 years old grinding, taking money from my buddies on the golf course, right? Like that's like what I want to be doing when I'm old, somewhere warm and nice. So it's like, you know what I mean? Being able to do that is what brings me happiness.
All right, golf question. We're not going to hold you too long today. I know we've had a good podcast. Question for you: who makes the best golfers? In order: baseball players, hockey players, or tennis players? You name them in order.
I'm going to go with hockey players. I'm going to go baseball. Every baseball player that I play with can hit the ball the farthest by far. And then I have one of my closest friends is an ex-tennis pro who's a very good golfer, but I don't hang out with a ton of ex-tennis players, but I could see them being pretty good. But I'm going to, for the sake of the podcast, give it to the hockey guys.
I'll go hockey, tennis, and then baseball. I think hockey players make the best, then tennis players. Baseball players have a lifetime of figuring out how not to slice the ball.
Yeah, but they can hit it hard.
Dude, they can crush it.
Yeah.
They can crush it. All right, so we covered a lot of good stuff. Anything else that we didn't cover today? First of all, I want to make sure people can find you. How do people let's say they heard about this event over our podcast? How can they find you? You got a website?
Yeah, so we have a new website, joinamalfi.com. Would love to have people there. Like I said, it's either athletes who are kind of transitioning or want to learn more about business, or business people who are leaders who are really enthusiastic about sports.
We'll put that description in the bio. You'll see that. It'll be right on the bottom of it with the website. So you can go on there, click on it. There'll be an email on there, a questionnaire they can go on and fill out.
Cool. Awesome.
Awesome.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
You are so welcome, man. This has been a pleasure. We'll have to do this again. We'll have to figure out another time.
I'm in. Sounds good. Yeah. This was great. I enjoyed it. And part 2 anytime you guys want.
Yeah, let's go. And we'll talk more about your next event because I want to be there at one of the events, and they sound so much fun.
We'd love to have you, and it's cool to see what you guys are doing with your podcast. I enjoyed being on, and look forward to following it now more in the future.
That's amazing. All right, Drew, thank you so much, and thank you to the listeners for tuning in. We've had a bunch of new countries logging in at pretty much every podcast we're growing. We had over 100 downloads in one day. So we appreciate you guys. You mean a lot to us. And keep sending the questions and keep sending the comments and likes. Take care. Have a great rest of your day. And we'll see you on the next episode of Health or High Water.